Good morning. So I have a couple people that are jumping on, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Terry Kimball, and I'm the president and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber of Commerce. And we have a really jam-packed program for you today with our Diversity and Inclusion Roundtable series. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. And we are really, really excited to bring together this discussion on international workforce and how to smooth cross-cultural transitions. And I also want to do a shout out to, with the support of our sponsors, we have Toyota Financial Services, PayPal, Intel, and APS. So thank you so much for your support. I'd also like to thank the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for all their help in creating this really innovative program, and especially being able to host it on Zoom. We have Tyler Conaway, Dr. Bill Crawford, Sharon Younger, Jen Hewitt, Mahis Prasad, Linda Chen, and Dr. Jeff McGee. Thank you to each and every one of you. At this time, I would like to introduce Tyler Conaway from PayPal. And Tyler has been a member of the financial and fraud risk management community for over 15 years at PayPal. He currently serves as the policy leader within PayPal's Global Commercial Risk Management Group. Tyler is also the global chair of PayPal Pride, which is PayPal's LGBTQ and affinity group, with over 2,800 members in 21 locations. You're a busy man, Tyler, around the world. Tyler is also a leader with the Chamber's Diversity and Inclusion Roundtables. So please help me welcome Tyler. So Tyler, I'm going to let you take it here.
Oh, Terry, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here today. As you mentioned, we do have quite a bit of material to run through. So in the interest of time, we'll get started. And then basically wanted to kind of introduce to you today the topic that we'll go through and the importance of why we're talking through it. You know, in Chandler, we have such a diversity of businesses and a diverse background of employees. We wanted to talk today about the global nature of top talent, fluidity of movement of top talent, and mainly attracting and retaining that talent when it comes to global workforce. So we assembled a great panel for you today that will kind of run through different experiences, perspectives on this topic. But before doing that, I wanted to kind of run through and present a little bit of data around why this is kind of an important topic for us to discuss. So McKenna, if you could throw up those PowerPoints for me and I'll run through those slides. Awesome. So global workforce and business leadership. Really, we wanted to focus on two key topics. One is fluid borders, and the other is attracting and retaining top talent. So wanted to give a little bit of data display. This is a wonderful study that's done every 2 years that kind of assesses the workforce globally and its willingness to relocate. So as you can see, even along the scale here, at least half of global respondents indicated a willingness to relocate somewhere else based on the correctness of a job opportunity, be that pay, an exciting new opportunity to learn more about another culture or another part of the world, but really focusing on that willingness to be fluid. The United States, if you kind of look across the scale, we might be right in the middle in the 50 to 60 range, but this ranges all the way up to folks that indicated 90% willingness based on location to relocate elsewhere. What this number indicates is really top talent exists globally, and from a recruiting standpoint, there is a high degree of willingness across respondents. with over half, even on the low end, telling us they would be willing to relocate to anywhere based on the correct job opportunity. So really, as we think of top talent and attracting top talent, where a local market might not be able to fill that particular specialized need, there is now a really fluid border with respect to the acquisition of talent. And you see this in a lot of larger companies, and now even in the small and medium business area. So wanted to emphasize the fluidity of employees and employee base as prospective candidates. And then the other aspect of fluid borders is just kind of to give you an exhibit of where people are looking to relocate or where their top attraction point is. So while we are waiting for the 2020 results, which will be refreshed every 2 years, the current rankings kind of, maybe not a surprise to most, but from the top 10 perspective of looking at places where candidates say they would be willing to relocate, the US still remains, pretty sizably the #1 location for folks to relocate to, with Germany, Canada, Australia, and the UK rounding out our top 5. As you kind of progress through, and these studies available online are fairly aligned in this, what you see is places that have a higher aggregation of larger companies tend to attract global talent. A lot of the specialized niche roles can't necessarily be fulfilled in a local operating market. So we have to be willing to broaden our horizons in terms of recruitment. And that creates opportunities globally for migration, migration not only from another country to any of these target countries, but intra-country. And I think we'll hear some of those experiences from our panelists today. So with that, we want to kind of look at why this is important and how we're going to attract and retain top talent. So a lot of the expertise out there, and we'll kind of run through this with more of the panelist experience, but really developing materials for how to create a welcoming environment for someone's arrival. A lot of companies who are attracting top talent may not have taken the time to put into creating materials for their employees to get up and running in a new environment. As we know, economic cultures, social cultures, and norms vary widely across borders. So while we can attract top talent very fluidly, we want to be prepared to receive that top talent into our organizations and create a welcoming environment in that local market. There's also a lot of recommendations around exploring low-cost ways to help that employee and their family get to know their new location and feel welcome. Creating local app suggestions, downloading maps, creating activities around scavenger hunts, bike and foodie tours. I think one aspect that anyone appreciates when traveling abroad is the ability to eat new cuisine. So really creating an opportunity to showcase local cuisines, local dining, and local small businesses are also recommended. And you have a wonderful resource here in the Chandler Chamber to help you with that. So, when you look at indexing businesses and businesses across all service modes, the Chandler Chamber was more than happy to help anyone sort of find and connect with local businesses, which is kind of to the next point of providing points of contact for the employee and any accompanying partners, really creating opportunities for them to have sort of a mentor, someone that helps create that transition. And really, when we come back to why we're in this discussion and why we have international recruitment, you really want to think of this as strengthening diversity. As we in this work table have done over and again, stressing the importance of a diverse workforce. Whether you're attracting top talent that moves in, let's say, from one location globally to another, or you're attracting folks who are part of that local citizenship but may have had a birth origin elsewhere, your willingness to have that global top talent sends a message that you are a welcoming environment for others to come to, and that includes people from all different backgrounds. That diversity, of course, strengthens the resilience of your organization and all those other benefits we've been going through time and again. New recruits with the experience of other countries and business climates always provide that uniqueness of new approach. Language skills are extremely important. So if your business has global ambit, wishes to service markets other than where you may have been natively located, finding those language support skills are crucial. And you don't typically do that by just recruiting from a local market. If your country is considering a new export market, there's so much to be gained by gaining hold of local knowledges about customers, competitors, and really kind of getting to know the economic culture. So all of those key benefits of why having a good mix of talent and being open to recruiting from a global market really are kind of the important points we want to emphasize today as to why we're having the discussion. So with that, we'll transition now to introduce our panelists today. I'm very excited. So introducing in no particular order here, Linda Chen, who is also on our diversity board here at the Chamber. Linda Chen studied international trading at the University of Singapore. Her industry expertise and network of connections inspired her to launch displays and signage in 2009 here in Chandler. Her drive and curiosity have taken the company from strong to stronger as it stays ahead of emerging trends and empowers business owners to express the pride in their brand across the country. Near and dear to me, a personal mentor and someone that has helped me in my leadership journey, Kate Ford from PayPal. Kate leads our global consumer risk services and operations and infrastructure and is based right here in Chandler, Arizona. She's been at PayPal since 2009, extensive leadership experience in global risk and customer service operations. She's now responsible for fraud queues, appeals, unauthorized claims, core services for consumer risk services, and her team spans the locations around the world. So wonderful panelist, and her own work experience also spans that cross-location like Linda's. Before joining PayPal, Kate spent 13 years at GE in money lending and credit risk teams, specializing in consumer and commercial risk management, enterprise risk management, governance and control. She holds a BA Hons in business decision analysis from the University of West England. And Kate moved to Chandler in Arizona in 2012, living previously in Dublin and in the United Kingdom. Renee Levin joins us from Intel Corporation. She's been with Intel since 1995 and serves as a community affairs manager in Chandler. Her responsibilities include managing Intel's grants, strategic relationships, as well as neighbor relations and K through 20 education programs. In addition, she serves as a new hire integration manager and a member of the diversity community of practice within her organization. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of Kansas, her home state, and is a proud member of the Chandler Chamber Board of Directors. So with that, we will hop into our panel questions. And as a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions you'd like answered at the end, just go ahead and type them into the chat box so we can have those listed up and just start getting to them as time permits at the end. So with that, we'll hop in and just start with our questions. So I'll start, Renee, with you and say, what opportunities have you had working or collaborating in a diverse and multicultural and inclusive setting? And can you give an overview of your career experience in that space?
Absolutely. So you mentioned that I have been working at Intel for 25 years. I just celebrated 25 years. And for those of you who've never been there before, it's a very diverse place. And that's one of the reasons I love it. I mean, it's not uncommon to walk into the elevator and hear a couple of different languages being spoken. That's our normal. And it's interesting when I see the news or read things and don't understand why people are having such a hard time with different people, people coming to America, I guess, or it's really interesting, the challenges. In my work, we have been able to do external events. As an example, we work with the city of Chandler to create the Multicultural Festival, and this has been like 20 years ago. Intel was instrumental long before my time in that organization, but really helping the communities to understand the value of diversity. And in my role, I've been able to serve on our diversity leadership team, as well as work with all of our employee groups. So I would say most organizations probably have their typical affinity groups, African American, Native American. Well, we also have the Bangladesh, the Pakistan, the Chinese group, the Russian group, they're all over the place, the Balkan Islands, the Latin American. I mean, it's everywhere. And the cool thing is that all employees are encouraged to join whatever organization and affinity group that they would like to. And we specifically encourage groups that maybe wouldn't typically do things together, collaborate and do events. So it is amazing. We have a multicultural festival inside of Intel every year, and we go and people bring awesome food and, you know, do cultural celebrations. And also the individual groups focus on training and retention as well as hiring. And I think that's one of the key things. And then also their community involvement outside of Intel. And we encourage all of that.
Wonderful. What a robust program. Thank you. Kate or Linda, if you'd like to chime in on this, go right ahead.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you, the panel, give me the opportunity to let me talk here. My name is Linda Chen. I originally was born in China, Shanghai. I have been growing up in Singapore and I finally moved to US about 12 years ago. So Chandler is the first place after I entered in the USA, and I have been living here for almost 12 years. When I was living in Singapore for about 15 years, I've been running a hotel amenity business. But after I moved to USA, at first year, I would stay at home trying to figure out what I can do here. But fortunately, very fortunate, I had the opportunity to build up a trade show and event business in Chandler for almost 10 years. So that's my working experience. I own the company. We're a small business. We have about 10 employees to work in the company. We have an overseas office in China as well. What do we specialize is for trade show and event display. We sell to the authorized dealers nationwide. So that allow us to have an opportunity to operate globally, to work with different work with different distributor nationwide and global wide.
Outstanding. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, so hello, Kate Ford. And the first thing that usually strikes people is we can never tell somebody's background from their looks. And I will share with you, working in the US, the first time I speak, I usually have to repeat the first sentence because the accent doesn't match the look. So my career history, I've been fortunate enough to actually work for 2 US global companies. First of all, starting out with General Electric in their finance division, and had a wonderful opportunity not only to live and work with global teams, but as part of that role, I lived in Poland for a period of time in Europe. I lived in Stamford, Connecticut, spent some time in Dublin and Ireland, and obviously my home country of England, spent some time working there and got exposed, I think, the first time to many different cultures. I grew up in a really small town in England where everybody kind of looked and sounded like me. And my first venture into work, I knew that different cultures existed, but I didn't have an opportunity to interact firsthand. So certainly General Electric was a wonderful introduction to that, being a multinational global company. And then in 2009, I started working for PayPal. And I actually was working out of the head office in Dublin for the first 3 years of my career. And I moved here to Chandler to take over North and Latin America as servicing. So I had a wonderful opportunity to interact with Latin American countries, predominantly Mexico and Brazil, but many others in that space. And then more recently, I have taken on a global role, and I have people in 10 centers around the globe. A lot of my work is actually going to visit those centers, and let me share with you the experience that you get from visiting and interacting face-to-face with different cultures and communities and people is second to none, second to none. And then very similar to Intel, PayPal has a wonderful employee resource group, affinity group community. And the one that I can absolutely say I'm in the inside group on is the Women's Network, but I have joined many of the other networks as an ally and an advocate, and that's really, hopefully we'll get into some questions about diversity and how you experience the culture. For me, it's very, very much feet first, head second, immerse yourself in it to really learn and absorb. So hopefully we can share some of that experience.
Wonderful. Thank you. As a wonderful segue from that, we'll go in, Linda, share any observations you've had that worked when building across cultures, and do you have any measure of success that you can share with us in kind of connecting there?
Sure. During this 10 years, I was very impressed how I figured out the different culture between when I operate a business in Singapore and when I operate a business in USA. I have a small story I would like to share. So there's one time, because we do global operations. So basically daytime, our sales headquarters in Chandler, we generate all the sales. We generate all the orders. We take care of all the orders. Once we finish, nighttime, when after 5 o'clock, which is Singapore, China is 8 a.m., we're ready to send our order to our manufacturer in China to produce it. So to me, it's typical business day is I operate between 8 to 5 o'clock in USA, and after 5 p.m. I start to work with my China team in China for production operation. So the story is from one of my employee. So there's one time I sent out a message to one of my employee in a chat group. I was asking a question for order confirmation. Ask the employee to confirm with me if the orders quantities and the production detail. So when one of my employees tried to answer my question, I have another employee send me a message in the group. He said, Linda, do you think you should get an answer tomorrow morning when we are all in the office? So it was kind of like a surprise for me because it's a cultural difference. I think American are very focused on work-life balance. To me, because the cultural difference, I feel it's normal. If after office hour, I have a question, I should ask, I should get an answer right away. So that was an interesting and impressive story to remind me I have to respect the business culture here. I have to be more, protect for the employee after work privacy, not try to invade their privacy life, to get a quick answer from my coworkers. So that is something, it's kind of like a wake up call to remind me, I have to be more focused on the cultural difference. Yeah, during this 10 years, we have different, we have the employee from different countries. Even it's a small business, we have the employee from Philippines, from England, from Mexico, from Philippines. So we have a really a diversified business culture here. And I really figure out USA is a great place for the business opportunity. It's a great country for pursue the dream, and it's a place for they call melting pot to bring all the different kind of people together. So I really appreciated the business opportunity we have been building up.
Great. Renee or Kate?
Yeah, let me jump in. My observations are really around kind of my experiences in the different offices. One of the things I think I'm going to be a lifelong student and learning and asking a ton of questions around what works and what doesn't work, seeking to understand a lot. I think one of the things when I came to the US, and let me share, coming to the US was slightly easier for me than I know many of my colleagues have had the experience. First of all, I was company sponsored. And when you're company sponsored, there's a ton of support staff there, attorneys, lawyers, tax counselors, you know, it takes an army to get one individual from a country to another. So I didn't really think about that in my experience as I came through, and you know, thinking about building cultures. I remember the first time I came to the US, not with PayPal, but with General Electric. It was, this is business as usual, and I should just act in the same way as I do in England, because, hey, guess what? We speak the same language. I'll talk about that later, hopefully. Funnily enough, we don't speak the same language. We speak the same language. I should be able to continue on that vein. And what I learned really quickly is that you have to honor and understand the different cultures, and spend time listening and thinking through and asking permission to ask some questions that you may think are just culturally insensitive. And what I learned from that is actually it builds just such a wonderful culture and wonderful fabric, because in the act of asking, you're actually showing the interest and building engagement. And, you know, for me, it's whether you come to the US or whether you do different things, it's asking the questions, what is it like for you? And how does this work? That really makes the difference. And funnily enough, quite the opposite also when I get asked about, okay, well, just as this session is doing, what is it like being an English person coming to the US, and what you experience? Celebrating the differences is actually more important than realizing the alignment. And that's what I will give you as a takeaway, is celebrate the differences, because that's what wins the game.
Outstanding. Thank you, Kate. Renee?
I was just going to agree with both of what said. And it's interesting, I think our employee groups at work, one of the things that we're doing is hoping to educate others, that we're all, you know, that I think people have this perception of that person is different and that person is different. And the cool thing is yeah, I mean, I'm different from McKenna, I'm different from Tyler, I'm different from everybody, right? I'm not different from you, I'm different like you. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to help people understand. And to Kate's point, I think, you know, after some of the things that have happened, you know, out in the world, some of our employee groups will say, come talk to us. What does it feel like to be a Muslim person in America? Or what does it feel like now during this pandemic to be an Asian person in, you know, in our work culture? And having those conversations to understand how the challenges and as well as the benefits of everybody bringing their own voice and their experiences and everything to the table. I think we all know, you know, from the business sense, the value of diversity, right? Having a group of people sitting around the table that are all similar, you know, same age range, same background, you know, whatever, the ideas that will be generated from that may be very similar. But when you have a group of folks that are bringing their backgrounds and their perspectives and even their problems to the table and identifying solutions to create some of the, or to fix some of those problems, it's amazing. You know, what one person may think is just, you know, we have clean drinking water, what, you go to the sink and turn it on and it comes out, right? Well, some of the people in our culture, we were going to start a garden on our site, and I from India shared with me, he grew up in a small village that they didn't have electricity or running water. And it was, you know, his family was a farmer, and he was sharing with me how they brought, you know, were able to grow produce. And I mean, it was just so cool that we have people that you learn these amazing things from just sharing, right? And having that open dialogue. And I think that is having that culture that you want to know. I want to know what it was like to be a, you know, a student in wherever. My niece was here last night, and her boyfriend grew up in France, and we talked about it. I mean, just to have those different perspectives it's just opened your mind and your heart and your world, I think.
Outstanding.
Tyler, if I can just add to that, you know, one thing I forgot is people want a top tip how to start the conversation, and that can be difficult. Do it over food. Because I will share with you some of the greatest conversations I've had and started. It is either celebrating popular foods, dispelling myths on you know what certain cultures do and don't, and really understanding the authenticity and the background to it. Just starts conversations in a great way, and it's kind of one of those elements that you're not touching on any pain points or any panic buttons or anything like that. It's a safe space to start. So I've got to share that with you.
Suggestion.
If you ever have a challenge, start with food.
Sold.
Great idea.
Thank you, Kate. So I think hearing some of your successes and how we've worked to build inclusive cultures and sort of span those differences in our cultural backgrounds, what challenges do you find can occur when entering the U.S. workforce or migrating from any workforce to another? Kate, I'll throw this one to you to start, and we can roundtable it.
Let me start with language. You know, I will share with people I speak the Queen's English, and you know, I say it with a smile because a little sidebar story. When I first started in Arizona, my peers and the leadership team downloaded an app on their phones because I would say something and they would have to then go and look at it in the app to translate to what I really meant. And I thought, gosh, you know, I've come to America, we both speak English. And I've realized that the interpretation, some words, the pronunciation, just makes an incredible difference. So my first challenge just started with the language, making a compromise and trying to understand what was being articulated. And I will share as I, you know, go around the globe, as I work with the different European markets, as I work with my team in India and my team in Shanghai and in Manila. We can often take someone speaking a language that isn't native to us or common to us as negative. You know, why are they having a conversation in a different language I don't understand? And in reality, it's more they're checking for comprehension with their peers to make sure they've all heard it in the same way, and then they'll come back. So, you know, language it is the first challenge that we absolutely need to think about. Second, and let me share from my experience, I had no idea how much I needed to learn about US politics and how it all worked. Because the part of the culture and life is evolving around the politics. You know, even when I have conversations with my peers and friends and I want to have a conversation about, hey, how are you, how's the family? The first thing that comes up is, isn't it crazy? You know, what's happening in the political landscape. So I felt I needed to educate myself on that. And I'm not a political person. You know, I'm pretty agnostic, but I had to learn about the politics to almost fit in, to be an insider, be part of the conversation. And I think that's really important as you think about inside and outside groups. And then the third thing that you know, really struck me as I came through it is the global awareness. And, you know, please do not take this, the US citizens, as any direction. You have a wonderful country. It is huge. There is no reason for people to need to leave the US or understand what the outside world looks like until there is a reason. And, you know, we see it in the the way that news streams across our platform, had to go to extreme measures to actually get news feeds from outside of the US. And really thinking about that global impact and being able to put it in the context of, as a leader, how do I relay that to my US-based teams? And then to my US-based teams, how do I convey that outside? Was a real challenge. You know, why do we care that there's a typhoon hitting Manila? Because the reality is, hey, it doesn't impact us, so we're good, right? And then being able to explain all of the nuances, or, you know, I don't think we could go through this conversation without talking about COVID-19. Why do we care that our Chinese colleagues were impacted by it? Well, in reality, as a global company, and we think about the sourcing, I don't know how many of you have tried to get a webcam or a headphone or a laptop or even an office chair recently. But we come to realize what a global economy we work in. And I think part of the challenge for me is making sure that I understood with my global mindset how that translated to providing the awareness and thinking about the bigger picture. And while it may not sound challenging, I promise you, when you're an outsider coming in, these things matter. And it matters that people care.
Great. Renee or Linda?
To me, when I entered the US workforce, the one big personal challenge, of course, same like Kate, is a language. My native language is Chinese. So even I've been self-study English for almost 10 years. I think how you master language to have a casual conversation versus how you master language to developing business are completely different. Even I try very hard to remember when the beginning of the year when I tried to develop the business. There's one time, you know, I talked to a customer. I offered a customer service. After that, my customer sent me an email, says, "You are Peach." When I received that email, I was kind of surprised. I was trying to understand, what does that mean? You are Peach. That means he's happy. He was happy with me, or he was not happy with me. So mastering a language to developing business is not easy. And especially as Kate mentioned, the USA is such a big country. We don't have opportunity to face-to-face to deal with customer. Majority of time we communicate with our customers through the phone and the email. So how I express myself in English, I think sometimes people use this as a judgment to judge if you are educated or not. So master language to entering a new foreign country is challenge for me. For business-wise, I think the challenge is how to understand the regulation, what you can do here and what you cannot do here. I give an example. When I was running business in Singapore, you know, I mean, recruiting is a main job. My main job I have to conduct on a daily basis, on a regular basis. So when I was running in business in Asia, it's a very common practice when we recruit people, when we have a job interview, it's very common practice. We ask, are you married? Or do you have kids? How many kids you have? You have daughter, or you live with your parents, or you live by yourself? So we ask a lot of personal questions in order to try to understand a person come to the company to apply for a job. We want to do an overall assessment. But after I built up the business here, I learned from other people, you are not allowed to ask those kind of personal questions when you do an interview. So that's a big difference. So how to understand the regulation, how to understand, you know, the sensitive area, what you can do, what you cannot do, what you can comment, what you cannot comment. You know, and another example is when I learned from, you know, if employee call you, says they're sick, you know, it's common practice in China. We will ask, oh, you know, how do you feel while you're sick? What kind of sickness you have? Are you okay? When do you think you will recover? Do you see a doctor? But I think, you know, it's not, you cannot really do this practice in China, even in USA, even it's just from your personal care. You know, you care about the people, you care about, you know, employee work for in this office. So that's the challenge I feel. we are continually have.
Excellent. Renee?
I see. So I know that we have had the opportunity, many of our employees have had opportunities to go live in different countries. We have locations in Costa Rica, Ireland, India, Israel, and people have the opportunity to go, and employees from those locations then come into Intel. I think one of the challenges is when a family relocates. The person that has the employment within Intel would make it so that person is eligible to work, but oftentimes maybe the spouse isn't, or they even bring their extended family, and maybe they don't know the language. Having those kids then enter into the school districts wherever they are. Sometimes we have large numbers of employees that come on a temporary assignment, maybe for 18 months or 2 years. And we had a phone call one time from a school district somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but they're like, all of a sudden they had an influx of kids that only spoke Hebrew. And they're like, we don't really know what's going on. Like, we need some help. And it was just interesting how, when you have a group of folks that are coming, it affects not just at work, right? It's the community in general. So we worked with the relocation organization to put the families into an apartment, like that they were all living there together, so that they would have a support system amongst each other. Trying to think of things like that. We do provide lots of training to understand what it's like to have a global team. Most of our folks have people all over the world, and we're meeting, whether it's, most of the time it's not a video conference, but it is a teleconference, and just learning how to navigate that. Different languages that are native being spoken over the phone, and cultures. I think Americans have a tendency to maybe talk a little bit more, and thinking that people need to then translate in what's being said, and especially if they're not very proficient at the English language, when they're conversing virtually, it's a slower pace, right? And we need to learn to slow and wait. You ask a question, do you have any questions? And you wait a couple of seconds, and if somebody hasn't jumped on it, you're on to the next thing. Well, with an international audience, that you just need to wait a little bit longer. Not only does it maybe take longer for technology. I'm watching all of these pastors in their houses, and they ask them a question, and then there's a silence, right? Because it for it to get to wherever they are, and then they, for it to come back. Many nuances and things that people they need to change their awareness a little bit.
Great, thank you very much. So I think in that vein, and we've heard language, we've heard a lot of other challenges and a lot of other areas where we need to focus on. I think we draw that understanding that communication is very important. So, and I'll throw this one to Linda. How do you function and communicate effectively and respectfully within the context of varying beliefs, behaviors, and backgrounds?
First of all, we use the high technology software to translate the language between our China team and the US team. So that's really helpful. And we treat everyone with respect and focus on the teamwork for the benefits of the company. So everybody work for a company like a team. Typically for our company, majority of our employee and co-workers are millennial. So we have a very fun environment. When the company perform well, we make sure every employee can participate in the profit sharing programs and enjoy the good results as a team we both created. And the most important things, as Kate mentioned, it's challenge because we have a very diversified employee background from people from different countries. It's challenge to find out every time when we have gathering, what kind of food we have to choose, because people from India, from Philippines, from China, from England. But yes, that's how we build up a work and welcome work environment for our employee here.
Thank you. Kate or Renee?
Well, I'll just jump in and say, you know, that we have really tried to build a culture where we recognize and respect the worth and dignity of every employee. And we really strive to build a fair system and that allows each of us to contribute and to reach our full potential. We do restrict some comments. We have an intranet site where we post personal stories of people with different backgrounds. And, you know, there are some things that are prohibited, such as swearing or things like that. But really, it's interesting on some of those stories, we've received some of the most positive comments. You know, thank you for sharing your stories, whether it's somebody that, you know, has is deaf or has, you know, is LGBT or whatever it is. We let them share the story. We really, you know, we highlight folks. It is a great way to, you know, let people see a little glimpse into what it's like for other people. And we really promote and value that diversity. And I think just making the time to take the focus on people and let them share their personal story, whether it's the age or the, you know, the origin where they are. And it's really, it's valued by our employees. They really enjoy hearing and learning about that. I think we've created a culture of learning, growing, and that's really important when you're talking about inclusion, right? Why is it important? And really helping people understand the value of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add I'm going to come from two perspectives. So PayPal as an organization mandated some unconscious bias training and some diversity training so that we had a common platform for all employees to be able to explore that and be able to have the conversation, seek to understand what it's like through other people's eyes. And showing that interest, and as Renee and Linda have said, sharing the story and sharing the insights is incredibly valuable. Something that I've done, I constantly have to ask for forgiveness and grace, whether I get things right or wrong. And you know, the internet is our friend, but not our friend. You know, sometimes the picture that we get is biased or it isn't quite correct. So I ask for forgiveness and grace. But one of the things that I like to be able to do in respecting the kind of beliefs and behaviors is to celebrate important days, not just with the market that's supporting that day, but also with the whole of my team saying, for instance, we've just gone through Holy Week with our Israeli, Filipino, and our European colleagues have all been taking time out, is to celebrate. You're taking time out to celebrate things that are important for you, but also to give thanks for everybody that isn't taking the time out, why it's important that we help support and we understand and we deliver the best experiences that we can, understanding why our resources may not be fully available or what the impact is. And I think being able to do that context and being able to share just beyond the, hey, I respect your beliefs and realize it's important to you and giving it meaning and feeling, but also sharing it with the rest of the team has just been phenomenal. Yeah.
Outstanding. And maybe to probe a little deeper on this one, I think everyone on our panel today, myself included, has those leadership functions that are very important to us. Providing feedback, sometimes critical. Is there a difference in approach you found that you need to take in delivering feedback across different cultural locations? Is there something you can maybe help with our audience and kind of how they might tailor that, you know, in your experience?
So one thing that I've definitely learned is as we provide feedback is not just to rely on one media. So it can't just be verbal. It has to be followed up with some kind of written communication, some kind of check-in, kind of follow-up. You know, I've learned from painful experience, having given some feedback and thought I was crisp and concise and on point, and then seeing what I got in return of you told me this, so I'm practicing something different. It's like, oh no, I really didn't mean that. So, you know, being able to reinforce it and check in has been critically important. I think, and you know, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's also asking the other individual, how do you want to receive feedback? You know, how does that work for them? And you know, some coaches are just give it to me straight, be super direct. Others, and if anybody works with Italians, let me tell you, feedback over a coffee is the way to go. And give it some informality and some broader discussion, just as has been incredible in my experience. Now, different people clearly, you know, you can't stack two Italians together and say it looks exactly the same. It does have to be tailored to the individual, but asking the questions around it. So two things: ask the questions and give it in many different forms so that it resonates, and check in to make sure that the understanding and the comprehension is as you intended it to be.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Can I share? We recently launched a new tool called Insights. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it really is a great way to talk about your strengths. You always start the conversation with what you're doing well, coaching, and it's all documented, and it's a conversation between you and your manager, you know, and your direct reports, and it really helps kind of set that conversation. And it documents, so you have the, you know, the written communication there, that you can go and look at it anytime, which I think is really helpful. One of the other things that my manager, it was, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, sent out a survey, and it was, you know, how do you like to be recognized? How do you like to feel part of your team? Do you think we spend enough time together? What would you like to see us do more of and less of? And it was really interesting because, like, everyone is different. And I think that helped her realize that, you know, some of us thought that we wanted to spend more time with the team, where, you know, doing fun things outside of work, where others wanted to maybe go and, you know, go to the cafe and sit down and have, you know, an afternoon snack or something. But it was just really interesting. And she shared, you know, as much as she could about how others would like to be recognized, and, you know, approached and received feedback. And again, to Kate's point, I think it's really helpful to know, do you, you know, how do you want to be recognized? And I think, of course, everyone wants to know what anything they're doing well, and then, you know, and providing that coaching. And we really, you know, help. I mean, everybody gets the same coaching. Well, I shouldn't say that, but they have the opportunity, right, to know this conversation that we're having in the next hour is going to be what you're doing well and what we need to work on. And I think just even setting that stage up front, knowing that you're going to be receiving feedback is valuable for people.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I share something?
Yeah, absolutely, Linda.
I learned from operation practice is give feedback is very important to the employee in our office. It's different than when I was operating business in Singapore. I think the Asian culture is more money motivation, so we don't really give employee feedback, but our feedback and recognition is more come from give a pay increase or special bonus. That's how we practice in Asia. But when I operate the business here, I learned from the practice, I think give feedback, use different methods to give the feedback, and the recognition to employees very important. I think US business culture employee are not only looking for pay increase or a special bonus, they also will be appreciated if company recognize their effort and the contribution by a thank you card or a gift card or one or two, a couple of days vacations. So that's, I feel like it's different how US people the employee want to receive the recognition and the feedback.
Outstanding. Thank you. So obviously with this wealth of experience that we have kind of managing across global cultures here on our panel, could you guys share any best practices and resources you have to make your company welcoming for someone that might be transitioning from one location to another? Renee, if I'll throw it out to you first.
Sure. We recently, our culture transformation has been a big focus for Intel. Working on truth and transparency, being fearless, and acting as one Intel. And I think sharing those goals globally is very helpful. Inclusion then runs the gamut across all of those things. And we have an amazing internal website. Anybody is able to access at any time. And there are just a wide variety of whether it's personal stories or training opportunities, of its computer-based training. We've done micro inequities training for people. I remember years ago, we had a came from China to work in our group, and we even had a class, that our whole business unit went to learn what it would be like to have, working with the Chinese on our team. And it's amazing the training and the resources that we have. And then those affinity groups. They do, of course, social events, where they're doing lots of virtual happy hours right now. I saw something for Cinco de Mayo that's coming up, it's falling on Taco Tuesday, and they're going to do a virtual happy hour. But there's many training events where it's somebody from like the leadership that will speak and talk about, how to manage your manager. And things like that, working on how do you write your development form that talks about, we all get to write our own review, or we did, and you would, be surprised at how many people highlight the things that they didn't get done, when it's like all of the amazing things that you did, you need to share that, right? So I think we do have a lot of resources available. People attend conferences, and really we have such an open culture that if we're encouraged that if there's somebody that you want to meet, from the CEO to somebody on his leadership team, anyone on our site leadership, reach out to them, ask if you can have 15-20 minutes on their calendar. I mean, always something that is welcomed, and we have skip level meetings and just a culture that really is pretty amazing. One thing, and I have to share this because it's really cool, we created the warm line a couple of years ago, and we had reached a point that we were happy with the numbers of people, of the underrepresented minorities and women that we had hired, people that were leaving, and we couldn't figure out why. So they created this warm line. It's part of HR, but it's really a confidential way to reach out to somebody in HR to talk about challenges that they may be facing. I've used it myself, and it is amazing. I mean, they have just, it's almost like a counseling session, if you will, somebody that you can talk to that's knowledgeable about things, whether it's you need additional training or you need some outside services or whatever, but the warm line, and it just recently expanded global, has received rave reviews. It was originally created for some of our women, technical women that were leaving, and we wanted to really understand why, but they've done some research and found out that, everyone is using it, which I think is great. So no matter what, you know, your background is, whether you're a long time or a new employee, male, female, you know, whatever, everybody is using the warm line, and it's great. Of our unique things.
Excellent. Kate or
Yeah.
Linda? Yeah.
So, you know, I think there are two things as people come to join our community that help. Clearly, if they're joining an employer that has employee resource groups set up and strong support structures, that's one thing. I think the other element in what I have found useful, and actually what I did, and big plug here to the Chandler Chamber of Commerce, because I think some of the things that the Chamber is doing and offering really provide some of those network opportunities and provide some of those insights. So definitely this diversity and inclusion group is great if you're not familiar with the community and you want to find people who may have come from similar backgrounds or have come and you want to seek to understand. Great. I joined the Women in Leadership group because I wanted to build this network that wasn't just women in my organization, but women in the community, you know, entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, small business owners, women that were in other corporate companies, and I think that's been incredibly helpful. I turned to some meetup groups, and you know, the prevalence of social media has really enabled you to go and find a core group of people that have similar interests or similar backgrounds and do meetups and experience it. And I will share with you the other thing I did, and you may think it's bizarre if I go to roughguides.com. Rough Guides is like a Lonely Planet guide or other elements. But Rough Guides is really neat because it has hints and tips on culture. So you can go and look at some elements of, you know, do you tip your hairdresser? I mean, who knows? And how much do you tip? And is it common to tip your taxi driver? And do you tip them the same rate as you would tip somebody in the service industry? Just really, kind of those resources that help you align on, here's how I would like to be able to act and behave so I don't feel like I'm in the outside group. So, you know, that's sharing. The other element, and here's what I do for people that join my team, is I buddy them up with other members of my team or a peer group, that they have that no pressure resource available, similar situations that they can ask what could be deemed as a silly question, but no question's a silly question in that environment, and they have a buddy group to go along with.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Linda?
I think because I own a small business, probably, you know, I don't have too many support from other resources. So what I'm trying to do is, because I'm a first generation immigrants, so versus employee and me, I'm a foreigner to them. So what I make a welcome, what do we try to build up a welcome environment is, we don't have employee relocated from other country to here, but when every time we have new employee to join our team, I want to make sure we spend some time to share the background, different background every employee have in office, to help people quickly to emerge into our in our team.
Outstanding. All right. Well, that is, you know, the extent of the questions we had today, and I hope everyone got a good flavor for not only the challenges, but really how to successfully board, retain, and be a welcoming environment for people of different backgrounds and cultures. So with that, we can transition into any of the questions and kind of open it up for additional questions from our virtual attendees today. I think the first question we had from Ina was, I think in response to Kate's comment around understanding the culture around politics in the US. If you've come to understand US politics, can you please explain it to the rest of us? Definitely wonderful, but I think definitely sharing your take, Kate, as someone that came from England, Ireland, and the European background, to what your vision of that is.
Yeah, I mean, I still have to go Google it. You know, what's the difference between a senator, a governor, a representative? You know, we just have a politician. So really understanding the influence in that space. You can look at the difference between your Republican or your Democrat or the Tea Party or the other groups that are involved. But I feel it's more around just educating what is important to those different parties. You know, I'll share in England, we have a similar version to Mr. Trump, the president, in Boris. There are some similarities in hairstyle, if nothing else. But you know, looking at the challenge of the leadership and where they stand on economic policy, where they're standing on the trade, and really thinking about that was more my point than necessarily going, do I agree in their beliefs and values, and you know, can I debate it? Now, what I will share with you is my husband, who we moved over here together. He was an international man of leisure for 2 years, whilst he got all of his relevant work permits, spent more time in that space, and he will debate politics with you till you're both out of breath, and really look at the different stances and positions. And I think it's just good debate style as opposed to, you know, good political acumen. I can't explain your country's politics to you. Much of it doesn't make sense to me, just in the way that it's set up. But here's what I will share is I think everybody has a voice and a perspective, and that's what we should pay attention to, whether you agree with it or not.
Thank you, Kate. I think we had another question that seems a little technical around visa. It says, for any visa, does a person seeking sponsorship have to have someone jeopardize their financials for a 10-year period?
Oh, no.
Yes.
I did have visa sponsorship. I didn't experience that, but I think every case has its own merits. You know, from the perspective of what it means to individuals, and I know this sounds like an expensive option, an immigration attorney is absolutely worth its weight in gold. And I know it's an expensive option because I have seen the bills that have come through from my immigration attorney, but there are many people that are very experienced in doing it and being able to guide, you know, what you can and should do to help your chances and help go through the visa process. And if you need a good attorney, I'm not going to recommend one, but there are some pretty good firms here locally.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel ever have any challenges, you know, and support best tips for folks with visas or any challenge with that process if they're on a path to citizenship or right to work, those kind of things that you want to share?
I did not have any experience about this area.
Me neither, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, to the person posing the question to, definitely, you know, connect with the chamber, connect with even just some basic research. I know there's a lot of good information out there, and to Kate's point, maybe even a legal consultation might be a best route to understand your options. Awesome.
Interesting, sorry.
All right. So I think that was all we had in our chat group and in our Q&A folder. To anyone on the line, feel free if you you have a question we haven't covered or a topic you'd like to pose to any of the panelists, please throw that in.
So here's something that I know it's not a question, but here's something that has struck. See, I can't even speak the language. Over the past few weeks, and it's been as we have been watching Doug Ducey do his daily, here's what's happening, state of the state presentations, is he's had a sign interpreter as part of that. And it struck me, I don't know how many of you have turned on the subtitles or cues in a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting. It's fascinating to hear how that technology is interpreting things. But also it's made me think about the use of sign language. And it takes me back to my time in Poland, where I definitely didn't speak Polish. And I went for language lessons to gain, as Linda shared, not just day-to-day, how do I buy something at the shops, but also the business language. I found sign language was incredibly important. And there are a number of different sign languages around the world. But what I have learned is you can sign in one of the recognized sign languages, and the interpretation is you get the gist of the conversation. And I find that a fascinating kind of connector as we look through it, as we talked about language. That's leading me actually to be on YouTube and look at the top 50 basic phrases in American Sign Language, and really think about how do we integrate that into our day-to-day lives as a connector. So just thought I would share that with you all. I'm inspired to do things that normally we wouldn't think about.
Interesting.
There's a humorous anecdote I think Kate mentioned earlier when she joined our site, the language differences. To share some of those wonderful items we learned, Kate would refer to our parking lot, and when we were discussing, for instance, parking options or any issues we'd observed in driving around in the parking lot, as a car park. And we were constantly looking for this park to go and aggregate in, and of which are you speaking? And the first time we heard, Doritos or Frito-Lay or any of our other junk food options referred to as crisps, we were also taken aback. I wonder what that means. Is that so? And definitely encourage everyone to explore those wonderful nuances in common language and even understanding things. I can share. Working with our Latin American teams, the first time I was discussing a policy or a rollout of a policy, I received an email that said I have doubts about this policy. So I immediately went into a response mode of explaining why we were rolling something out, what the emphasis was in this change management, and the answer I got back was, no, I fully understand and support that. I just have a question, to understand that saying I have a doubt meant I have a question. I think being open to the idea of different words having shared meaning is something too I'd impress on everyone. But taking the time to learn those wonderful differences in terminology is just an exciting thing for me. I've always been fascinated with other cultures, so knowing you have a wealth of those resources here in the chamber, maybe at your own company, but if you don't, definitely reach out to us, because we can connect you with any folks like our awesome panel today, or anyone else in the chamber that might be more aligned in your industry or area to help you with this. So thank you again. Right. Any other thoughts or questions from the audience? We've got about 10 minutes left open for that. And if not, we can wrap up early, but I'll leave it open for a quick minute here.
Remember to pause, Tyler. We learned that from Renee. More than 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is kind of our nature to just go, okay, well, now we're done. But it does take a minute for people to think about what they want to say.
Absolutely.
Let me share something else, right? And I think it's a hallmark moment. One of my other experiences of coming to the US is there are way more celebrations of things than we see elsewhere in the globe. Like Happy Bosses Day, very significant today. Happy Administrative Professionals Day. I know it's Earth Day, which is what we should really be focused on, but way more of these things. And I know when I experienced my first Happy Bosses Day, how do you react to that? Welcome?
Right?
So yeah, here in the US, you celebrate more things than we're used to, which is unusual. And I don't know how you should celebrate all of the different things that happen.
You know, that's a wonderful point, Kate. And I had a wonderful conversation with some of our analytics teams in our Shanghai office when we were going through our holiday season here in December, asking around, hey, I'm just curious, what are Christmas parties? What is that? What is this white elephant gift exchange thing on your calendar? Can you explain that? And in explaining it, it was, oh, well, I think we have something similar we do. We use WeChat, and we have sort of a pool that money goes into, and you pick a number and you could win a prize. And we just do this virtually now. So, you know, just taking the moment to even understand and explain what a holiday is. Kate, your team is obviously practicing something similar to what we're doing in global commercial, and putting on calendars when there's a holiday or celebration anywhere in our locations. I know I've been fascinated to do my own little Google research and understand the background around it, and then just talk to people. And you find, I think, like any location, even for folks like myself who born and raised in the United States, some holidays or national days may not be very relevant to me, or even maybe a majority of Americans might look at it and say, well, yeah, we have it on the calendar, but I don't really do much with it, versus some others that might have more significance to each person. So I found a great exercise is asking about other holidays and getting the feedback around, is this your favorite thing? What are those holiday moments you look forward to most? And just asking that of anyone.
Right.
The answers you get back are fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And simple things like Mother's Day. And, you know, we can all relate to Mother's Day. For England, it's back in March. So when I first was over here and I was trying to get a wonderfully authentic Mother's Day card to, you know, airmail over to my mother, as opposed to using one of these electronic card methods, nothing was available. And it was like, oh my gosh, do you not celebrate your mothers? And then I found out actually that that's a May event here in the US. My husband's family live in New Zealand, and they've adopted the May event, even though they should have adopted the UK calendar. So we need to figure that one out. But just those differences that we have to understand and celebrate. It is fun times, as I put it, fun times in the world of different cultures and diversity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Linda, do you have are there cultural holidays you've experienced both in the U.S. and in Asia that you have kind of a preference list, maybe a new holiday you adopted here, or that you've come to know, and one that you could share with us that may not be known to us for perspectives from Asian culture.
I celebrate a lot of holidays because, as I mentioned, I was born in China and I grew up in Singapore, so now I live in USA. There's a lot of different holidays, especially Singapore. You know, we have 3 different races with Chinese, Malay, and India. So we celebrate different kind of religious holiday in Singapore. So after I moved here, I start to celebrate. We don't really celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving when I was living in Singapore, but now, I mean, almost I have to put on 1 or 2 holiday celebration or reminder, send over the message on my calendar almost every 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a very interesting experience.
Envious. That's a lot of fun celebration. Nice. So no other thoughts. I think we can just kind of give some close up thoughts here, and thank you all for coming. So again, let's give Linda Chen, Kate Ford, and Renee Levin our virtual round of applause. Thank you very much for our panel today. I appreciate you taking time and sharing your experience. I hope today what we gained was the real importance of listening, learning to understand individuals, and learning to understand and celebrate difference. I think I heard that consistently from all the panelists, that differences exist, and plotting ahead without acknowledgement of that is not the best way to probably practice, but instead taking the time to get to know and be, as I think I heard Kate say, a lifelong learner, having that openness to understand different perspectives, immerse yourself in them, and don't be afraid to ask questions. It seems like we all recognize the openness of maybe stepping in it a little bit, learning to take a step back and say, how did I fail there? What can I do better? But not shying away from having those conversations and finding that genuine interest is what usually sparks the bond that can close those gaps. So again, great amount of information shared by our panelists today. For all those attending and those maybe that weren't able to attend, we do have the recording of the session as well as all the material we shared. And you can channel any questions back up through the chamber if you think of something you couldn't think of in the moment here today that you'd like answered, or want to make a deeper connection with any of our panelists. So again, thank you so much everyone for attending. As we go forward with these series, depending on, of course, our COVID-19 environment, where we're at, we will hope at some point to resume, the in-person meetings, but this is one of our new innovations. So I think for a lot of us on the call today, this is a normal way of business interaction, getting on video calls. So a great way to sort of offer this opportunity to folks to virtually attend as well. So thank you again for everyone in attending. Thanks again to our panel. And most importantly, thank you to the Chamber for hosting this important series. All right, guys. Wonderful. Have a great day.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Bye.